Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our coffee. Today's guest is Matt Clark. He is a business coach. He's a former pit crew coach and all kinds of things. He's really fun to talk to. This is going to be an exciting conversation packed with lots of valuable information. And I know I say this a lot, grab a notebook and get ready to take notes, but this one, you better be ready to take notes because we were actually taking notes during the conversation so we could remember what we were saying. It's actually really, really good, and you're going to want to tune in and be very engaged with this conversation. So grab a cup of coffee and get ready for this conversation with Matt Clark.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. Time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
Matt, thank you for being here today. First, we have a segment that we do on most episodes. It depends on the episode, but it's called Rapid Fire. 5 randomly selected questions just to get under your skin.
Okay.
Unknown point values.
I can't wait.
Are you ready?
Let's roll.
All right. Number 1, if you could be in the movie of your choice, what movie would you choose and what character would you play?
Wow, that is a great question. I'm looking at my favorite movie, which is Field of Dreams. But you know what? I think it'd have to be Leonidas at 300.
I don't even know what that is.
Right? So, gang, you need to get him to look at the movie 300. You know, it's just about the Spartans.
Okay.
And he was a phenomenal leader that gathered the trust of men in a village to move mountains.
Oh, gotcha. That sounds exciting.
Well, I mean, he was a stud, too.
The movie is just called 300.
300.
Huh, I have to check it out. All right, number 2. If you could only choose one vacation destination, where would you pick and why?
Maybe Turks and Caicos, something like that.
Yeah.
Simply because my wife is a beach person.
Okay.
Clear water, warm weather, and just...
Have you ever been?
Not to Turks, but we have been on a couple cruises and made some stops along those places, and it is absolutely phenomenal. So I do it for her, although I love the beach life.
I'm not a big fan of the beach. I don't like the sand.
Oh, man, I love it. Listen, that's when God speaks to me, man, right? Right there, early morning on the beach when very few people are out there, a nice walk, a nice run. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, number 3. If you were to create a slogan for your life, what would it be?
I have one.
All right.
All right. And it's really my personal core values, right? It is passion, integrity, transparency.
Oh.
Right. I want to live life with passion. Everything I do, I'm all in. Integrity. Listen, it is the only thing that you can give away that people can't take from you. And then transparent. I don't want to be something that I'm not. I want people to see me for who I am.
Yeah.
And that just that ties into I'm a pit coach, PIT coach for NASCAR. So that's where that came from. See?
Look at that.
Tying that all
It's
together.
just all connected.
All connected.
I like it. Years ago, I was working on an exercise, and it was like, what is the one word that you would want people to know you by? And authentic was the thing that I came up with. And I kind of on the same lines, like the transparency thing. It's just be who you are.
Exactly.
And it's harder than, I guess it's harder to do than it is to say.
And you and I just quickly had a quick, conversation about embracing your story, and that is part of embracing your story, being the authentic you.
Yeah, very much. All right, number 4. What business idea do you think would be super profitable, but that you would never want to pursue?
Okay, full transparency here. So, this is going way off the rails, and people are going to be like, "What the heck?" But this is true. I think, and we may have to edit this, Aaron. I'm not sure, but a business idea would be simply providing companionship, me personally, for women who've lost their husband at a later part of their life. My wife and I had this conversation. I said, "Honey, it would be very profitable." She's like, "Are you insane?" I'm like, listen, and again, this is not on the sexual side at all, but this is just like, hey, go out to dinner. You go out to dinner at 4:30, you're home by 7:30.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, so.
And it would be super profitable.
There would be low overhead, right? And a little time commitment. Anyway.
Oh, man.
Anyway, shall we move on?
I had no expectation for that answer. That's great.
It's just, you know what? It's just a recent conversation with my wife. And listen, I love giving my wife a hard time with stuff like that.
Sure.
So that's where it came from.
I'm glad that you and your wife have had that conversation. That's incredible. Number 5, last one. What ideas are giving you energy lately?
Wow, you know what? I am really dialing in on mindset.
Okay.
And I am working with a young golfer, about turned 12 years old, highly competitive, won over 70 tournaments. And really where he is putting his game together is between the ears.
Okay.
And that is really inspiring me, again, to dive deeper into that. I'm a high-performance coach. I work with NASCAR athletes, tight margins. But really, when you're diving into it, mindset, our words are really what we live by because it comes out of our heart. We speak it into our words, and then we really ultimately live that out. So really, mindset.
Very cool. All right. That's 5 rapid-fire questions. You passed. We'll give you a score of 913.
I was hoping for something like 950, but I'll take the 13.
Well, sorry about that.
You got it.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit locdoc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property. All right, let's jump into the conversation. And before we kind of get too far into it, I want to hear a little bit about who Matt Clark is, because I've met you multiple times. We used to attend church together at the same place years ago.
We worked together.
Worked together.
I was your camera guy. You were the producer. I thought, listen.
Camera two.
Right?
Ready?
Oh, sorry. Beeve, you're going to have to take that click out. But I'm pointing back to the sound booth. Beeve was our producer as well.
Yeah.
Again, side note, this dude is insane when it comes to the headset. We'd have to shut him down. But yeah, Chad and I worked together, had a lot of fun times.
There was a lot of chatter on the headset.
There was.
That's exactly. He just is talking in my ears because he can. So, but anyways, the thing that I heard about Matt Clark was NASCAR, and I never really had all the pieces of the puzzle together. So I'm interested to hear the full story. And we were just kind of chatting. We probably had a full podcast episode before we even started the recording process, but I want to hear a little bit about that. And with that, it was interesting. Years ago, back when I was doing field work for our organization, we used to service a couple of facilities that had NASCAR teams in them. I've never been a NASCAR fan. I've never watched racing. I never really understood the sport as a whole. But I started doing work inside of these facilities, and I walk in there, and they've got these full-fledged gyms in there, like heavyweight workout, all kinds of stuff. I'm like, what in the world are these people doing? And then I walk around back to do something, and they're doing time trials with cars, just throwing a car in there, and these guys are just flying around the car.
Yeah, they're pit practice.
And I'm like, what in the world? And I had a new appreciation for the athletic side of the sport that was very intriguing. So I know you're sporting a nice little championship ring there, so I'm interested to hear more about that. But just kind of a quick, as well, maybe not quick, but just who is Matt Clark and how have you arrived at this point?
Okay, I'll try to make it quick. Long story short, I'm a blue-collar guy. I was raised by a family in blue-collar. We work construction. My dad has an 8th grade education, self-made man.
Yeah.
But they knew we needed to head to college. Headed to college, long story short, I'm leaving a lot of details out here, but ended up in North Carolina after I was recently married. I have a degree in communication and went back to school because I'm a lifetime learner. So I went to CPCC, took some courses in motorsports, got connected with the crew chief there, and we became friends. And that crew chief, about a year later, knew my background. I had worked as a college baseball coach. I've been coaching, youth and young adults my entire life at that time. He's like, hey, I know your background. I know your integrity. I want you to come and start training our pit crews. And I got immersed. I didn't even know that there was such a position as a pit crew coach in NASCAR. And long story short, I spent a year there and then connected with someone at the Hendrick Motorsports organization.
Okay.
And spent about 8 years there and then moved on to another organization.
So what does a pit crew coach do?
Okay, I think that's a great question, and I have to explain that all the time. But if you played football, if you played baseball, if you've played basketball, there are coaches, right? Someone who does the X's and O's. I do the X's and O's for the pit crews.
Okay.
So we train them over the wall, the guys who put 4 tires on in fuel in 11 seconds. I learned each position. I coached myself because I'm a visual learner. I went over the wall myself as a pit crew member early in my career. And because of my athletic background in coaching, and I'm a baseball guy, so there's a lot of parallels with baseball and motorsports, lateral movements, hand-eye coordination. It was an easy connection for me. So I became a pit crew coach, and what we do is just coach the guys in their mechanics, in their techniques, in their mindset to service the car. Again, we've had professional athletes, NFL athletes, Major League Baseball players, right? These guys are studs. Come to pit practice.
Sure.
Having that same thing that you thought, like, pretty simple. I can change a tire on my car.
Yeah.
Absolutely walk out of there blown away about what these guys can do. And really what it's evolved to and what you saw there is with the big gym, it evolved from no workouts at all to college coaches coming in and coaches recruiting off the college campus to fill these pit crews.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it was a very eye-opening experience. So essentially you were coaching, just preparing the pit crew team to do what they needed to do at the highest level.
Absolutely.
That's incredible.
High-performance coach.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so you're not doing that anymore, but you were very successful in that.
I was part of 5 championships, over 80 wins. I have a career, and I am so thankful. God opened some crazy doors for me. Part of me wearing this ring today, which maybe we'll get into, is embracing your story. But this is one of the championship rings, and it's just a reminder of where I came from to where God is taking me to and through. But yeah, I had a very successful career, and really working in that industry, there's so many overlays in the business realm.
Gotcha.
Tight margins, performance, repeatability, systems, automation, all really have boiled down to what I'm doing now, which is I'm a small business coach. I'm a speaker and presenter. I'm a DISC Level 2 certified guy. Personalities, I love communication. So really, my life has just been a crazy, I would say, journey. Some folks are very linear. I know you were telling me your story before, when we were making coffee here.
Yep.
Somewhat linear, right? Being here and being part of the culture and building this business to how great it is right now. I came from all kind of crazy ways, and sometimes I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But now it's all coming to full light.
All of the preparation brings
Absolutely.
you to a certain point. Yeah, and I think within that, it's also interesting that all that preparation will continue to evolve. So what you're doing right now is actually preparing you for the next big thing or the next phase.
So life is full of iterations.
Yeah.
And that's what the beauty of life is. I think sometimes, and I look at Carol Dweck, she talked about mindset. Do you have a fixed mindset, things will never change, or a growth mindset, that things can change and you can evolve them? And I am of the growth mindset, and people can learn to do that. But to look at, I'm not done yet. And you and I were talking off camera, like my word for this year was launch. I have so many projects that I need to launch, but each iteration of me is preparing me for the next launch of this crazy idea that I might have.
Yeah. A couple of podcast episodes ago, it was with Lars Johnston and Tony Hokanson, and we were talking about the fact that, a lot of us as business owners or leaders, and we recently, as kind of a book club, went through this book called Free the Idea Monkey. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No, but I'm going to take a note right on that.
All right, Free the Idea Monkey, and it talks about the differences between, good partnerships, but an idea monkey and then somebody that is a ringleader to help implement the ideas. So you typically have somebody that's coming up with all these crazy ideas or good ideas all the time, and then you have to have somebody to implement them, because typically that idea monkey is not a good implementer.
I'm a monkey.
There you go.
And I need an implementer. I've had people say to me, Matt, listen, you need to get a team. You need to get someone to help you, kind of get those things launched, because I'm a big picture thinker, right? And if I look at my DISC personality profile, I'm a high D, high I. And if you follow DISC at all, dominant, influencing. But when I look at my C, which is really the cautious, detailed person, like I have like this much.
There.
Well, it's like the YMCA, you get a medal for showing up. I think they gave me a little bit of C just to say, hey, you got a little bit of C in your profile, but when the details, that's not me. But big picture, absolutely. So yeah, I'm definitely the ideal monkey.
Yeah. And
Thanks. I learned a lot about myself today.
There you go. That's what we're here for. But we were talking about the fact that it's easy for us to come up with ideas. The hardest part is to actually implement them. And you put a word around it, launch. It's hard to launch it. It's easy to come up with the ideas for some people, right? You can come up with ideas all day, but how are you actually going to launch it? So with that, there comes the aspect of coaching to help you with those types of things, to kind of point out those flaws. I find it interesting even on the pit crew coaching aspect of, a seemingly repeatable process, but you get to watch it and understand this is where your hiccup is. This is where you can kind of unlock that next big phase. So with all that, you talked about mindset, which was one of the actual notes that I pulled out of here. So you started a podcast this year called Pit Stop for Success.
Right.
One of the episodes on there was the obstacles to success.
Right.
Recall that one?
I think so. That was one of those launch and leave it. But we got it launched, right? So that again, the idea monkey in me buckled down and got some episodes launched. Corona hit. I have a lot of coaching clients. No excuses here. This is not the excuse train.
Yeah.
You give me the eyebrows like, yeah, right, coach. But no, you're right. I have to pick that back up. But yes, the obstacle.
Okay, so the obstacle to success. And one of the reasons that I invited you on this podcast was because I was out running one day and I was listening to those podcasts. And I was like, man, one, they're on point. They're quick snippets, whereas this podcast typically runs 35, 40 minutes.
Right.
These are 5, 6, 7 minutes.
Right.
And I listened to, I think, all of them while I was running. And I was like, man, this is really good information. And that's what prompted me to reach out. One of the things that you mentioned on there was mindset. That's one of the obstacles to success.
Right.
Unpack that a little bit more. Where do you see that? Like what does that mean? Because you just said you've got growth and fixed. Unpack that, how that can be an obstacle.
So if we look at any situation, and I learned this through NASCAR, through some of my corporate clients, executive coaching, there's an answer to everything. Mm-hmm. Every question has an answer.
Okay.
You just have to find it. Where people stop is they get tired or don't see that there's an answer. So they have a fixed mindset, like we can't solve this problem. There's an issue. It's not solvable. We can't with money. There is always an answer. It doesn't necessarily have to make sense or be the most cost efficient, but there is an answer. So then you have, conversely, the growth mindset that looks at the obstacle or the challenge as a way to find a solution. Mm-hmm. I'm a solution finder. Mm-hmm. That's why for me, working with pit crews, right, we were constantly trying to shave time. We would break down 18 to 20 segments of an 11-second pit stop. So think about that. Yeah. I'm talking about tenths and hundredths of a seconds where we could shave time. So we were always looking to figure that out. So having that mindset of growth, that there is an answer, I'm not going to be in my own way. I just have to find it.
Sure. It's interesting because I think in business, I mean, and obviously as a coach, you probably see this a lot, is when those obstacles happen. And one of our guys around here used to say all the time, an obstacle is a challenge is an opportunity to succeed, right?
Absolutely.
So you're constantly, that's just part of business, is you're going to constantly see challenges and have these obstacles come up. Now it's your opportunity to work through it, and maybe you find the next big achievement inside of your organization because you've dedicated the time and resource to try to fix it rather than just settle on, well, that's just the way it is.
Well, I think right there what you've defined the difference between an entrepreneur and a wantrepreneur. And listen, I'm not throwing stones at anybody because I'm the idea monkey, and a lot of things have stalled out, right?
Yeah.
But where I coach my clients is, how do we get through that? And really, this is how we work, right? And I wrote these notes just before we started here. But automate, delegate, eliminate will allow you to accelerate, right? Okay. So in one of those areas, getting through those things, whether you automate it, delegate it, or eliminate it, is going to help you get a solution to the problem. But people stop when it gets hard. Mm-hmm. So we all want to be our own bosses. We all want to call our own shots. And again, listen, this is how I coach my clients. I'm a multiple revenue stream kind of guy. Mm-hmm. So I run a small cleaning business, my coaching business, some other things that I'm working on. I was getting ready to open up a CrossFit gym just before COVID hit. But you build the business that you want. Mm-hmm. Now, some of these are lifestyle business for me. Yep. I'll work one day a week in them. Mm-hmm. That's my choice to build them that way. But if you want to build, a 7-figure business with 100 employees, we can take you to that, but there's going to be obstacles along the way. You have to be a problem solver, and you have to be willing to put in the time to figure out how we get through. And a lot of times, and again, this comes from me, is you have to hire someone to help you. Mm-hmm. And number one, that's with a coach. But number two, I'm so guilty of doing things myself, web design, I'm good enough at a lot of things to hurt myself. And you have to get to a point, like, again, working on my cars, like, listen, I could do the brakes. I'm paying someone to do that. Like, I'm outsourcing web development. I'm outsourcing graphic design. I can dabble in that stuff, but when I look at my hourly rate, am I going to pay my hourly rate for what I am as a CEO to fix these little things? No. So that's where the problem comes in, Chad.
That's a big chunk that you just dropped there on the table.
That's a whole nother episode we can just talk about, but
automate, delegate, eliminate, right?
Which will allow you to accelerate.
Why do the clients that you're dealing with, and maybe this is an assumptive statement, why do a lot of business owners struggle with the delegation side of things? Because I would imagine of the three, that's probably, I don't know, maybe they're all equal, but delegating is difficult. Why?
I'll go to you as our case study.
Oh, boy.
Right? You're our business owner. We have a finished product that we want, an experience for our customers that we want. And what I coach my clients to is, listen, you have to get real here. No one will ever treat your business as well as you treat your business. No one will ever treat your customer as well as you do. If we can get our employees to be 70% of what we do, we will have a killer business. Because listen, when they go home, they're disconnecting. And we could build culture, and we'll talk culture hopefully at some other time, like being part of the Loc-Doc community. All those things are important. At the end of the day, they have their family, but this is the owner's child. So when we look at our businesses, we take really deep ownership. And for us to let go of a system that we devised or set up, and someone has a better idea, no, that's not going to work. We have a fixed mindset, right? Not a growth mindset.
Yeah.
So we become the bottleneck. And I did this. I did this on one of our calls. Actually, no, I did this. I did a live intensive with one of my groups here in San Antonio. Flew down to meet my coaching group, and they were having some adult beverages. So I took a beer bottle and I gave it to one of the guys. And this was a conversation that he needed to have with his admin. And I said to him, "What is that?" He goes, "It's a bottle." I said, "Okay, what is this?" He said, "The label." I said, "What is this?" He goes, "The glass." I said, "Yeah, but what is this right here?" He said, well, that's the neck, the bottleneck. I said, "Exactly. What you need to have this conversation with her is that she is the bottleneck." And it's very visual to say what is holding back the company is the bottleneck. And a lot of times as owners, they are the bottleneck.
That is very true. And I think when you identify that, once you remove yourself as the bottleneck and you see the success with it, then now your job ultimately becomes finding the bottlenecks everywhere else in the organization and start to eliminate them.
Right. So, and this is how I coach my folks, right? Basically, it's as simple as this, right? It is we market, we sell, we execute. Most of the times, it's not in the marketing because we can pull levers with advertising, marketing spends, content, whatever we want. The sales part, again, we can be inhibited by people because we got our sales processes down. Most of the time, the bottleneck is at the execution, really boots on the ground and the people. But you're right. You can look at those things and say, wow, we've got all these people. Sales folks don't have enough to sell. Okay, bottlenecks in marketing. So yes, we become a bottleneck identifier.
Yeah. Once you have taken yourself out of that, and inevitably, if you're in a growth mindset and in a growth state, you're probably going to position yourself back in another bottleneck, right? It's just a constant chasing of the process.
You're the idea monkey because you want to grow your company.
Yep.
So it allows you, again, once you get systems set up, things are automated. And again, going back to my NASCAR roots, we needed repeatability and durability. So we had to build it bulletproof, repeatable, and there was accountability.
Yeah.
Right? Actually, I'm going to have to go back and listen to this and write those things down because it was pretty good. That's on the fly. But we checklist.
Somebody take notes of this.
Beav, can we get some notes on this? But living by the checklist was huge. And again, that's where the accountability came in. If there was a gear that blew up or the oil wasn't put in or a shock wasn't bolted, which I've got a whole story on that when I was young in the business about leaving a shock unbolted. But that accountability comes, but we can become the bottleneck when we dip back into systems that work or we try to build new systems to make us better.
Just a reminder, you're listening to the Coffee Break Podcast.
Also, we wanted to let you know that our team puts together a weekly blog post. You can find it at locdoc.net/blog. It's guaranteed to raise your IQ by 12 points or your money back. So it's pretty much a win-win. All right, back to the conversation.
Not a bad thing always.
No, but you're speaking a lot of truth that people struggle with a lot. And I've found myself over the years. When you get overwhelmed and frustrated, it's like if you fall back to the things that work, which is checklist, right? Documenting things out. And why does that work? It's because you're able to share that information with everybody, which goes back to your second thing of delegating, right? Because if you have a defined list of information to work off of, then you can empower other people to get involved and actually work on that and execute on that. But if you are too busy creating that chaos, then you ultimately will falter into being that bottleneck because everybody's waiting on you to tell you what to do.
100%. And as you were talking, I took some notes here, but it comes down to systems and processes. And really, that's the guardrails.
Yeah.
And I'm big about measuring accountability, KPIs.
Ooh.
So,
man,
Matt,
we're just going to have to start our own podcast like weekly.
Dude, I'm down for it. I was sitting here. We'll discuss offline on this. But the KPIs. Here's where we fail as business owners, and I've seen it with all the folks I've coached. They have good ideas, great business models, great people, but at the end of the day, what gets measured gets counted, right? So when there is a lack of KPIs, people don't know if they're winning or losing. Now, I do the 4 Ps. I'm going to try to remember them off my head, but it is, let me see here, PPP. I keep them on my board here. It's production, process, professionalism, and I forget the 4th P. I'll remember that as we're talking.
Okay.
All right, but each one of them can be measured across the company. And let's just say, Chad, you're one of your techs. Your techs, I'm not going to ask you just yet, but I'm going to ask you in a second.
Uh-oh.
Your check should have a minimum of a few KPIs, daily, weekly, and monthly. That's how they know if they're winning or losing.
Yep.
Right? So tying this back up to accountability, automation, systems, and processes, that's where the money's made, rubber meets the road, however you want to call it, what metaphor we want to use. But if we don't have accountability in our organizations, then basically we're hurting cats.
Oh, yeah.
Because that dives back into culture, because in the absence of a defined culture, a culture will be established.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's always a culture. It's depending on how you define it up front, right?
Well, who drives it?
Yeah, who drives it?
Okay. You good? Because I'm going to drop a bomb on you for this next segment here.
All right, let's go.
What's your core values here?
Well, we have 8 of them.
Okay.
Defined expectations, consistent communication, cultivating trust. Then we want to have outrageous kindness, courageous honesty. We want to have refined quality and unexpected cleanliness and intentional execution.
Is that an acronym for anything?
Yeah, no.
Okay, it's not. Okay, very good.
But they are listed out in a specific order to get to that point. Yep.
Okay, so this is what I love, because having that culture conversation, this is where I start with my business owners. What are your core values? And they're like, well, I got them somewhere, which tells me, number one, you're not using them. And if you're not using them, you might as well not have them.
Yep.
So again, I don't know where you want to go, but how are you leveraging now? I'm going back to my TV days. I spent 3 years in NASCAR, Fox Sports 1 as a TV analyst and host, but how are you leveraging core values in your daily, weekly, monthly here at Loc-Doc?
Well, we've had this conversation a lot. Obviously, I haven't had it with you. So it's interesting that you bring it up this way. Every coach that I've ever talked to has always gone down this path. So it's a solidified thought process. But the theory is, obviously, if you have core values, are they something that you're applying on a regular basis? So for us, we have a Monday morning conference call. We had one this morning, but on the day that we're recording this, and we'll always bring up some type of a core value and give some example associated with it. So that's a big focus point for us. We have a Wednesday morning all team meeting, and we go through our core values every week on that, and we'll typically highlight one and give some example around it. But we also make our hiring and firing decisions off of it, and we do disciplinary and positive reinforcement off of it as well.
So, dude, can I say dude on this podcast? Yeah, but listen, I guess I say it because I'm excited here. So, you're doing some great things here, and this is what I'm working with my coaching clients and having them have this epiphany. When you leverage core values, it now becomes the core values become the scalpel and the axe. Okay, so the scalpel to be like, hey, listen, great job and discipline. Hey, what we could have done. That. We're not living up to that core value. We can use examples. But then also everything in the company is measured against core values. Every department, every position. So now it becomes, well, Chad didn't fire me. And number one, I believe people fire themselves. I've never fired anyone. They fired themselves. Separate conversation.
I did fire one guy one time out of frustration, but that was a big lesson that I learned to not do that.
So... Again, these are I feel like I'm on one of my coaching calls and we have these conversations. Never, ever fire out of frustration, anger as a leader. And that's leadership development, whole nother program, right? But coming back to core values, leveraging them as, the end all be all removes Chad out of the picture. Now it's like, hey, I'm not firing you because I don't like you. You agreed to your core values, right, Chad? Okay. So you haven't measured up to this core value, and that core value. As a result, we're going to have to let today be your last day. Thank you for everything. Here's your final check. Or the HR will hear, you'll hear from HR. And it's now not you. The core values become the leverage. And when people get a hold of that, and there's accountability, and you guys are using it on a daily, weekly basis, it changes the culture of the company because those core values drive and establish culture in the company.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And a couple of years ago, I would have probably argued the fact that it didn't because we didn't do it. But once you once you actually apply it and implement it, it is a massive game changer. Clarity. One of the things we talk about, it's a predetermined set of decisions. It's the behaviors that we operate in order to get business done. All of those things, because to me, I've given every single employee a checklist, a filter of which they can go by and do everything. So if they are by themselves or if they're a group of folks together and they're like, hey, what should we do? There's a checklist. There's a filter to go back to. You don't have to ask anybody. So as long as they validate and verify against those core values, then go ahead and make that decision.
Absolutely. And here's what we have to understand about core values. They're internal core values and they're external core values. Not every one of our core values is external.
Yeah.
But what we can do is some of our core values, like one of my cleaning companies that I work with, one of their core values is deliver the wow.
Yeah.
Right? They want their customer, when the windows are clean, to be like, wow.
Yeah.
Now that's an internal, because I can ask you as our admin, as our tech, did you deliver the wow?
Yeah.
And there's a whole acronym for the wow that they built out. But on the external, their marketing materials, their Facebook posts is like, we delivered the wow.
Yeah.
But then there's other ones that are internal. Not everything is for external use. And when people get that, like, hey, we can leverage our core values, how we see fit. Now, they all come in the package of core values, but you can break them off and say, hey, these are some things that we can use in our marketing to really tie in the culture internally and externally.
We could talk for hours about core values and culture, and I'm down for it. I do want to leave some space in here. You mentioned earlier before we got started about embracing your story.
Oh, I love that,
and why that's relevant. So I do want to spend some time on that, and like what is the reason that you say that? Because I think a lot of us, maybe with our story, it's like, well, nobody cares about that. It's boring. I'm tired of saying the same thing over and over again. Why do you say that there's power in embracing your story?
Well, let me start at the top. I built out a major checklist for my coaching clients. These are all business systems, but I always start with number one is, what is your why? What's my story?
Yeah.
Right. Simon Sinek, start with the why,
Sure.
but it's true. Understanding who you are, why you're in business, why you feel like God has put you on this green earth is important. So for the longest time, Chad, I spent 15 years highly successful in NASCAR, and I say that very respectfully. I'm not humble bragging, I don't think.
Yeah.
But if I am, so be it. But
just scratching your face with you. Yeah.
But I spent 15 years doing that. But when I left that, and I had my last stint on pit road and did my last deal on TV, I kind of left it there. Now, many people on the outside, when I shared my story, they're like, dude, that's incredible. I never felt it was incredible. I was almost embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because I felt like NASCAR is a little bit rednecky, kind of not mainstream sports. I'm a stick and ball guy in NASCAR. So I just kind of built my platform. A lot of my presentations were like the 5 lug nuts of success, race themes, but I never fully embraced it until I spent time with my coach, my business coach. And that's where, we may have hit it before, but she said to me, you have to embrace your story or it's a slap in God's face. And this is just over the last 2 or 3 months that I've said, you know what, I have to embrace it. So that's why, like, if you follow or know anyone in sports, very few guys, particularly in racing, will ever wear one of their rings out. I have a box full of rings, championship rings, race, it's cool, really cool. They're trophies.
Sure.
But I decided that I have to embrace my story for the platform that was given to me. That platform in NASCAR made me the coach who I am, gave me the business insights that I can share, helped me build my brand. And I felt like I had to be true and transparent, right?
Sure.
One of my core values, to really own it. So that's why I will always, when I'm in public, particularly presenting, I'll have, you can't see it here, but I've got checkered flag socks on. I've got a belt on, because it's a reminder. And the reason that it's important, it helps us frame up why we do what we do. Because things become a lot of pressure. They become hard. We question, well, this employee let me down. It really stabbed me in my heart. But what's my why? When we understand my why, and really my why is really to impact business owners to change the world. And that's one of my whys. And that's why I love working with small business owners to get them to the next level, to get through the obstacles, and really embracing my story as a pit coach. Who ever heard of a pit crew coach, right? We know a football coach. We know a D-line coach. We know of a lacrosse coach. I'm just happen to be kind of a unique guy who came up and was like, hey, I'm a pit crew coach.
Yeah. So embracing your story is understanding why you're at the point where you are and sharing that with others so that they can understand the journey?
Yes, it is helping them unpack themselves. Okay, and again, if your why is to make money, I'm good with that.
Sure.
But let's unpack the why in that. Is there something lacking? And now I felt I missed my calling to be a psychologist. And,
Yeah. Well, especially since you're a disc coach, level 2. I mean, that's part of it.
Level 2, right? And I love how people are wired. But why? Why is it about money? Is it about proving my dad wrong? Right? Because when we become truly authentic with who we are and accepting who we are, I think we can be the best versions of ourselves. And that's it doesn't have to be business owners.
Yeah.
I think as people, we live, I don't want to get too philosophical here, but we live this facade of being something that we're truly not. And we see so much posturing on social media.
Oh, yeah.
And what I've had the beauty of when I look at the lives and the books of a lot of these business owners, and I love them to pieces, some of them are a train wreck. Their marriages are on the rocks. They're looking at their net profit and they're like, I'm not super profitable at all. But yet on the outward, man, they've got all the things that people think small business owners have, which is a ton of cash stacked under the bed,
Sure.
all the new cars, all the vacation, but they don't realize the headache, the heartbreak, and all the things that go with building a business. So embracing that story allows them to come back. Why are you doing it? And doing it, I don't know if there's a right or wrong reason, but doing it for an authentic reason, if it's just to provide for your family, when the times get hard, you'll dial it in. And let me just share this quick story.
Sure.
So I have had a career that a lot of people who follow NASCAR would be thrilled to have, and I say that humbly. When I exited those businesses, which was Fox Sports 1 as an analyst, on-air analyst, and a pit crew coach for some of the best talent ever to race a race car, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Kevin Harvick, those folks, I was like, where am I at? I went back to my roots because I'm a blue-collar guy, cleaning, pressure washing, soft washing. And I recall this moment. I was on a 10,000 square foot house, all one floor, mind you.
Okay.
10,000 square feet. So you see how big this is.
Oh, yeah.
On the lake, 4 acres on the lake. Two physicians owned it. And I'm scrubbing limestone trucked in from Texas with a brush on my hands and knees.
Sure.
And I said to myself, if this is what, and I said it to God, I said, God, if this is my story, that's fine. But my why was I needed to provide.
Yeah.
So what you do, you get the brush, you scrub hard, you do it the right way, you make extremely happy customers, and you live to clean another day.
Sure.
And it just taught me the value of embracing where you are on the journey because I can share that with people. It's like some people would consider a big fall from wherever you were.
Yeah.
I just considered another step in my journey to where God has me moving, you know, and I don't think I'm done yet.
Yeah.
You know, the idea monkey's still jumping around in my head, but I'm going to settle in some areas and work with some people to help them say, hey, this is why, understanding why you do what you do is important.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. I think, you know, it's an inspiring concept. It's an inspiring story because I think we've all had, you know, certain aspirations that you're trying to drive towards. But when you actually have to stop and go, why am I driving for that? What is the real purpose behind what I'm doing? It completely changes what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if you haven't stopped and had that question asked of you or asked yourself, then it will be a harsh realization whenever it happens because you're just constantly churning for what, you know, just for that next big paycheck. For what are you churning for? Because at some point in time, that will subside, and you have to make real decisions on what I want to do with my life and with the resources that have been given to me.
I think every position, every team member has to have that inner dialogue.
Yeah.
And as leaders and coaches, we have to ask them, what is your why?
Yeah.
Because I think even understanding the folks on your team, like, what is your why? Why are you here? Why are you doing? Why admin? Why IT? Why Beav? Beav's in the studio here. Like, and again, having worked with Beav, the producer here, like, I think I know his why, but I'd love to have a conversation of what's your real why, Beav? But understanding that, to your point, makes us unpack and be able to handle the adversity. Because when we dial in our why,
Yeah.
then it helps us drive through, we talked about it earlier, the obstacles. And then when we go through an obstacle, we get stronger. And again, if it's temporary, and I think you would agree here, right? If you knew someone was going to be here a year, you may or may not hire them. But if you knew their why to be here a year, you might say, I'll tell you what, you're on board. I'm going to help you get to your why. You're going to help us grow our company. You're going to grow. When you leave, you're going to document all your systems and processes, and you're going to train your next person. But we're going to transition you out because you were truthful, honest, and you shared your why. But what happens is we bury our why, and all we do is just dig, grind, and then we get tired, we get burnt out, and that's why people leave companies, because they don't understand their why. They haven't figured out, listen, I just want to have a bass boat. I just want to go hunting on the weekends. I want to be home with my kids. Can I do it remotely? Like, as leaders, owners, and managers, we have to help our folks unpack their why on a fairly regular basis.
I think that's a good point to leave it at, Matt. I really do think that's we've talked about a lot here today, but I think that's a good summarization of what's going on and an action item for anybody that's listening to this today.
Absolutely. So here's your homework. Like I always leave folks with their homework, is really take a moment to write your story and just bullet point it. And really try to identify, go back through your life. Are there key moments in your life that you had a mind shift? Maybe you were bullied, picked on. God forbid, maybe a person was raped or taken advantage of. Why? Like not your why, but that determines and that helps you unpack, like, okay, why I don't trust people, why I'm not here. So unpacking your why will give you transparency of thought as you move forward.
Hey, Matt, thank you again for joining us today. It's been exciting. We've been trying to get connected for quite some time, and I'm super glad he was able to come in and chat with us for a little while today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, well, we've got over 100 episodes just like this or very similar to this with topics about business ideas, practices, and strategies. It's our focus, it's our goal with this podcast to share relevant information that will impact your business at whatever stage that you're in. So, If you haven't already, please subscribe. Go to locdoc.net/podcast. Click the subscribe button. There's a link there for all of the podcast platforms so that you can connect. We also have video version of this as well, and it is on YouTube and Facebook. All you have to do is search for Loc-Doc and podcast, and it'll come up. Actually, if you search for Loc-Doc and podcast on any podcast platform or on Google, you'll find links to get to where you need to go. So we encourage you to do that. So you'll find that brand new episode every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Thanks so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast.